At ASH this year, I presented a pooled analysis of 2 phase 2 clinical trials and off-trial experience using an induction regimen of Rituximab Bendamustine and Rituximab high-dose Cytarabine for transplant-eligible patients with mantle cell lymphoma. So the initial data for this regimen came out a few years ago. It was the initial phase 2 trial that showed very favorable outcomes among 23 patients with an overall response rate of 96% and a complete response rate of 96%. And based on that, that became the standard regimen for transplant-eligible patients with mantle cell lymphoma at Dana-Farber. And there was also a second phase 2 trial started at Washington University in St. Louis, testing a very similar regimen. The Dana-Farber trial did sequential dosing of Rituximab Bendamustine followed by Rituximab Cytarabine, and WashU tried a different sequence where they did alternating doses of RB and RC. So what we presented at ASH this year was a pooled analysis of all of those different cohorts of patients. So we had a total of about 86 patients with varying prognostic risk. There were a good amount of high-risk patients, patients with high MIPI scores and blastoid variants. And we found that at the end of induction, the overall response rate was 98% and the complete response rate was 92%, both of which are quite high in this disease. The majority of patients went on to get autologous stem cell transplantation. The safety profile looked favorable overall. We did notice that among some patients there was a trend towards delayed platelet recovery after autologous transplantation, particularly in patients who received higher doses of Cytarabine, the 3 gram per meter squared dose, and also patients who had the alternating RB-RC rather than sequential therapy. For patients who didn't have those, the rate of platelet recovery after transplantation looked reasonable. The progression-free and overall survival were also quite good. At 3 years, the progression-free survival among the pooled study population was 85%, and the overall survival was 92%, both of which are very good numbers in this disease. So I think that this regimen is very promising and is an excellent option for patients who need treatment for mantle cell lymphoma. And I'm interested to see if it will be compared against other potential regimens in the future for this disease.